Today, we are taking a fascinating and, maybe a slightly eerie ride in the back of a Waymo. We're diving deep into Alphabet's autonomous vehicle leader to figure out just how close we are to a truly driverless future. And maybe more importantly, what's holding the steering wheel back.
It's an absolutely crucial mission. And, the whole premise of autonomy has fundamentally changed in just the last year or so.
As so.
We've hit this critical inflection point. It's no longer just a research problem. Waymo and its competitors, too, they've largely proven the core L4 technology works.
L4 meaning the car can drive itself, but in, a specific area.
Exactly, a defined operational domain. So the battle has shifted completely. It's now all about execution. It's about scaling operations, managing these incredibly complex logistics, and navigating this nightmarish labyrinth of state-by-state regulation.
Yeah, the sources we pulled together for this deep dive are fantastic. We're synthesizing a snapshot of the industry from the July 2025 Autonomy Leaderboard rankings. We're also comparing technical reports that contrast Waymo's whole strategy, the LiDAR versus vision debate, and most critically, we are studying the regulatory battles, the specific legislative actions happening right now.
Especially in the hot markets.
Especially in California. And, of course, we have to face the massive socioeconomic implications. We're talking about labor, urban planning, all of it.
So the central question for you, the listener, is this. Waymo is undeniably expanding at a nearly unbelievable rate. I mean, they're pushing into new major cities seemingly every quarter.
Right.
So given that progress, what is the real bottleneck? What's preventing them from just, flipping a switch and going nationwide? Is it some technical edge case their L4 systems still can't handle?
Or is it the legal environment?
That's the other big one. This inconsistent legal and regulatory framework in the U.S. Or is it something as simple and as crucial as public trust, especially after some of the high-profile incidents we've seen with their competitors?
We have to look at the hard data to find out.
Exactly.
So let's start with that hard data, because the summer of 2025 was a period of really intense activity across the entire AV sector. It's that time of year when investors, analysts, they all kind of reset their expectations, which brings us to the July 2025 Autonomous Vehicle Leaderboard snapshot.
And if you look at those July 2025 rankings, it really just reaffirms what we already suspected about Waymo's position.
They're still on top.
They are the undeniable leader in that pure autonomous vehicles category. They're holding on to that #1 rank, and it's consistent. But it's not just about good engineering. The outlook remains fiercely bullish.
And that's because of the money.
It's entirely because it's backed so heavily by Alphabet's colossal financial support. They just do not have to worry about running out of cash. That lets them pursue this expensive, methodical strategy of scaling up without the short-term pressures that, a smaller VC-funded rival would face.
That stability is a huge factor when you see how the rest of the market is shifting. I mean, we saw Zoox, which has been trying to scale its unique purpose-built vehicle.
Right, the little pod-looking car.
Exactly. They got downgraded to #3 with a neutral outlook. And that tells me the market is really starting to question the long-term viability of their specific business model.
It's the cost. It's always the cost.
The staggering costs required for fleet manufacturing and scaling.
That's it. Cost of scale is the existential threat for everyone who isn't named Waymo or, maybe Tesla. The sheer capital you need to build and maintain thousands of these incredibly complex vehicles. I mean, each one is a rolling supercomputer. It's immense.
And speaking of Tesla, we should note they just entered this core AV leaderboard for the very first time, right, at #2.
They did. But this is based almost entirely on their initial public robotaxi pilots in Austin. And they represent the complete opposite philosophical approach to scaling.
A whole different ballgame, which we will definitely get into later.
For sure.
But the robotaxi service is only part of the story, right? That's what struck me when I was reviewing the market momentum. The fall of 2025 is shaping up to be extremely busy.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for capital markets. We're seeing autonomous trucking, this huge industrial sector, really start to mature.
Absolutely. The autonomy economy has matured far beyond just, ferrying people downtown for dinner. In autonomous trucking, you have a really distinct leadership pack forming.
Who's in that pack?
You've got Aurora and Kodiak tied for #1, both with bullish outlooks. And they're right there alongside Torque, Bot Auto, and Plus. The thing is, the move to automation and long-haul logistics is, you could argue, it's an easier problem than dense city driving.
And the economic incentive is enormous.
It's huge.
And then there's the licensing sector. This, to me, was the most strategically intriguing part of the whole snapshot.
I agree.
It proves that the autonomous software, the Waymo driver, the actual brains, is becoming a commodity that you can just sell.
Precisely. Licensing is all about separating that software stack from the headache of physical fleet ownership. Wave is still at the top in that category.
But Neuro got a big upgrade.
Neuro's upgrade to a bullish outlook is huge. That came right after they landed a major licensing deal with Uber and Lucid. It just validates this whole idea that you can strategically pivot away from owning and managing physical assets.
And just focus on being the brain provider.
Exactly. For a company struggling with fleet maintenance and logistics, just buying a tested, reliable autonomy stack off the shelf becomes a very, very attractive strategy.
So when we talk about Waymo's dominance, let's ground it in scale, because these are not just test cases anymore. This is real commercial volume.
The numbers are staggering, and they are precisely why analysts rate them so highly. The source material we have indicates Waymo is now serving over 1 million rides every single month.
1 million a month. And that's just in the Bay Area and LA County.
Just those two markets.
Yeah.
And as of December 2023, so almost 2 years ago now, they had already accumulated over 7 million miles of rider-only driving.
Rider only, meaning no human safety driver behind the wheel.
Zero human intervention. They've served over 700,000 public ride-hailing trips.
That is volume. I mean, that means the L4 driverless experience is a core part of the urban transportation infrastructure in those key markets.
It is.
And that operational success is clearly feeding into their next phase, which seems to be this aggressive, almost exponential geographic scaling.
It's clear they've shifted from asking, can we build it, to how fast can we deploy it everywhere.
Okay, so let's look at the sheer ambition of this expansion plan. I mean, they're essentially trying to quadruple their footprint. Right now, they have public services in 5 anchor cities: San Francisco, LA, Austin, Atlanta, and Phoenix. Phoenix was the debut market way back in 2020, but the new roster it's global and it's challenging.
The immediate additions announced in late 2025 are very strategic. You got Minneapolis, New Orleans, and Tampa, Florida.
Minneapolis is interesting. Why there?
What I found most interesting in the analysis is why Minneapolis. Waymo is deliberately rolling out test vehicles there ahead of the Jeep winter.
Ah, for the snow?
For the snow, the sleet, the sub-zero conditions, they want to rigorously test their perception technology in the worst possible weather. If they can generalize their L4 system to operate safely in a Minneapolis blizzard.
They unlock the entire northern half of the U.S.
Exactly.
And the future cities list is it's a list of the world's most complex urban environments: Miami, Dallas, Houston, D.C., Nashville.
And then you go global: London, Tokyo. They're not avoiding difficulty. They are actively seeking it out. That tells you how much confidence they have in their generalized L4 driver software.
The most potent signal of that confidence, though, has to be the regulatory land grab in California.
Oh, without a doubt.
Historically, their service was so tightly restricted, right? Geofenced to certain neighborhoods.
Very tight.
But the California DMV approved a massive new permit area in late 2025. This essentially allows them to operate across the entire Bay Area, Sacramento, and almost all of Southern California.
Stretching right up to the Mexican border.
To get that kind of widespread approval it's a staggering achievement. It's proof that they've successfully navigated the regulatory process in one of the most hostile environments.
It's not just organic growth, it's calculated leverage. The sources even confirmed that San Diego is their next stop in the Golden State, and they're just waiting on that final mid-2026 approval.
And this kind of rapid expansion relies entirely on their operational strategy, what we're calling the Waymo playbook. The core tech is now stable, so the focus is logistics, it's fleet management, it's manufacturing volume.
You see that pivot directly in their partnerships. They've realized they are engineers and software developers first.
Right.
So they partner with logistics experts. Uber for the hailing integration, companies like Move and Avis for the, the dirty work, the maintenance, the cleaning, the fleet management.
They're smart enough to realize that managing a fleet of thousands of cars across multiple cities requires a completely different skill set than training a neural network.
And they are backing that up with serious hardware investment. They recently opened a new 239,000 square foot autonomous vehicle factory in the Phoenix area.
And that's for installations and maintenance.
Exactly. And they're adding 2,000 more fully autonomous Jaguar I-Pace vehicles. Though the sources did note This was their final delivery from Jaguar, which signals a big transition.
A transition away from just modifying existing luxury EVs.
Right. They're moving toward the Zeekr RT. It's an all-electric, purpose-built EV. And Waymo is planning to integrate its upcoming sixth-generation self-driving tech into those new vehicles.
That's a huge deal. That continuous integration of newer, more sophisticated hardware that's designed specifically for autonomy shows they're constantly refreshing their tech stack.
Which is critical for long-term safety and performance.
And of course, the rider experience is still critical to their ability to scale. The Uber partnership is a fantastic logistical play in cities like Austin and Atlanta.
It's brilliant. As a rider, you just use the Uber app you already know, UberX, Comfort, whatever, and you might be matched with a Waymo.
And the key to reducing that consumer friction, no upcharge.
That's it.
The rider can accept or decline the driverless car, and they have 247 access to human support, both through the app and on touchscreens in the vehicle. It just minimizes that technological hurdle for the average person.
And while this domestic rollout is so aggressive, their global adaptation strategy is equally telling. I mean, they're conducting manual driving tests in some of the most complex, unpredictable traffic environments on Earth.
New York City and Tokyo.
Exactly. And think about what that means. In NYC, we're talking Manhattan, downtown Brooklyn, Jersey City. You have double-park delivery trucks, aggressive cyclists, pedestrians who just ignore traffic signals.
And just constant, dense visual clutter.
It's chaos. And then in Tokyo, you have a completely different set of raid features, incredibly narrow streets, different signaling, different cultural driving norms.
And they're manually driving test vehicles there.
In 7 different Tokyo wards, using trained local drivers just to gather data. The whole point is to adapt the Waymo driver software to handle these unique local traffic patterns and complex road rules.
That is the definition of scaling L4 generalization, isn't it? It's not just about getting the car to drive, it's making sure the car understands the unwritten rules of the road in every single culture.
Exactly.
Which brings us right to the heart of the technical difference, the Waymo driver itself and its insistence on LiDAR.
The great tech stack debate.
Yes. So why is Waymo so fundamentally different from a competitor like Tesla?
It's a philosophical difference on how a machine should perceive the world. Waymo is firmly, and I mean firmly, in the sensor fusion camp. Their Waymo 1 vehicles are these highly complex machines. They use a system that fuses data from 5 distinct LiDAR units, 5, plus radar, plus 29 high-resolution cameras.
Wow, this isn't just belt and suspenders. This is a highly redundant system, and Waymo's claim is absolute. LiDAR is essential for safe autonomy.
It is.
Can you just break down for the listener why LiDAR is so critical to their safety framework?
Absolutely. So LiDAR light detection and ranging it shoots out millions of laser pulses every second and then measures the time it takes for them to bounce back. This creates an incredibly precise 3D point cloud of the environment.
So it's not an image, it's a map of dots.
That's a perfect 3D map. Unlike cameras, which give you 2D image data that a neural network has to interpret to guess at depth and velocity, LiDAR gives you instantaneous, highly accurate 3D depth perception.
So it doesn't get confused by things like shadows or changing light or visual noise?
Precisely. If it's nighttime, or if the sun is setting right into the camera lens, or if there's a sudden dust cloud, a vision system really struggles with that. LiDAR penetrates those obstacles better, and it's completely independent of the ambient light.
So that precision and that redundancy, fusing the 3D data from LiDAR with the rich textural data from the 29 cameras and radar, that's what gives them the confidence for driverless L4.
That's their entire safety case.
And they're also constantly refining the underlying intelligence, not just the hardware. They run these Waymo open dataset challenges.
Now in its 6th round, yeah.
And they're focusing on advanced areas like vision-based end-to-end driving and scenario generation. They're basically inviting the entire research community to come and stress test their models.
Which leads to this consensus we see across the industry sources. Waymo's L4 system is generalized, and it's safe in diverse cities, SF, LA, Austin.
And to clarify for our listener, L4 generalization means the core driver software is robust enough that it doesn't need to be totally re-engineered for every new city.
That's right. It can handle the steep hills of San Francisco and the wide, flat lanes of Phoenix using the same base code.
So if the L4 is proven in generalizing, the bottleneck is genuinely shifting away from the core tech.
It really is. It's now logistics, it's fleet size, it's risk management, and just those few remaining operational hurdles.
What are the big ones?
The 2 big ones remaining are public highway driving and harsh weather. Waymo does tons of driverless highway driving, But it's all internal right now, employee only.
So they need regulatory
They
clearance.
need that clearance for public freeway operation. And, as we discussed with Minneapolis, they need to perfect performance in snow and heavy rain, which is notoriously challenging for all sensors, LiDAR included.
That brings us to a really crucial pivot point, this methodical, safety-first approach. It has to be directly influenced by the high stakes involved. The idea that a serious accident is an existential threat isn't just hyperbole, is it?
No, it's a core business principle. And it sets the stage perfectly for our next section: regulatory headwinds, safety, and the liability question.
Because Waymo is navigating a regulatory swamp.
That's putting it mildly. The U.S. lacks any kind of single, cohesive national AV law, and this results in what industry analysts call a state-by-state slog. You have over 35 states with wildly different rules governing everything from testing protocols to insurance requirements and, crucially, liability.
And the federal role from the NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has been largely hands-off, right?
It has. They provide voluntary safety guidelines, and they use a standing general order to mandate crash reporting, but the mandatory rules and liability standards are still incomplete. NHTSA's 2025 framework signals they want to move toward regulation, but they're trying to balance safety, innovation, and commercial deployment.
Which is a tough balance to strike.
Very difficult. And the variability between states is just incredible. California requires extensive testing permits and these black box-style data recorders. New York, a state with famously dense cities, still requires a licensed human safety driver for any testing on public roads,
And then you have a state like Texas.
which has taken this very hands-off approach, simply stating that the vehicle owner is the legal operator, which is an interesting attempt to push liability downstream, but it creates huge complications when you're talking about a commercial fleet.
This regulatory fragmentation combined with real-world incidents, it just fuels this intense public and political safety scrutiny. We saw this manifest really strongly in California.
Oh, yeah.
In September 2023, you had Bay Area lawmakers, including high-profile figures like Nancy Pelosi, weighing in with a letter citing serious safety concerns.
And their concern was driven by specific data coming out of the San Francisco Fire Department. The SFFD had logged about 50 incidents that year where autonomous vehicles obstructed emergency responders or public transit.
And we should be clear, this isn't necessarily a crash.
No, not at all. It might be a robotaxi just freezing mid-intersection or pulling over unexpectedly and blocking a fire truck or an ambulance that's trying to get through.
And so they urged NHTSA to mandate the collection of more detailed safety data, things like vehicle retrieval events.
When the company has to send a human to manually go and get a stranded AV.
Right. And any instances of emergency interference?
And Waymo, of course, has to proactively manage this perception. They counter that, this kind of operational inconvenience is far less severe than the constant risk posed by human drivers.
They have their own data.
They claim their proprietary data shows 91% fewer serious injury crashes and 92% fewer crashes injuring a pedestrian compared to human benchmarks. And they cite 0 collisions involving pedestrians or cyclists in their first million autonomous miles.
That data is crucial for their public defense, but it's also self-reported, right?
It is, and that's why every single operational failure is met with a regulatory investigation. Case in point, NHTSA recently opened a preliminary investigation into approximately 2,000 Waymo taxis because of a media report.
The allegation, which is still under investigation, was extremely serious.
Very. A driverless Waymo car in Atlanta allegedly failed to stop for a stopped school bus while students were disembarking.
So red lights flashing, stop sign extended.
Everything. And the Waymo vehicle allegedly drove around it. I mean, that is a fundamental safety breach concerning one of the most protected events on the road.
And this public pressure is now driving real legislative change. They're closing these glaring regulatory loopholes.
You have to look at California's new law, Assembly Bill 1777, which went into effect in January 2025. This law was passed specifically to address the ridiculous situation where law enforcement had no legal mechanism to fine a driverless car.
That anecdote is perfect for illustrating the absurdity. I remember reading about a Waymo doing an illegal U-turn in San Bruno. The police wanted to issue a ticket.
But who do you give it to? The vehicle has no driver. The law was written for human beings, not corporations operating in AI.
So AB 1777 fixes that.
It does. Now, law enforcement can issue a notice of AV noncompliance directly to the operating company, to Waymo, which then has to report that incident to the DMV within 72 hours. It's a game changer for accountability.
But the single greatest influence on Waymo's current methodical, safety-first strategy has to be the cautionary tale of their competitor crews.
Oh, absolutely. The fallout from the October 2023 incident.
That event and how they handled it became the defining existential crisis for the entire sector.
It did. A cruise vehicle ran over a pedestrian who had been thrown into its path by a different human driver. And the catastrophe wasn't the initial impact, it was what happened next.
The vehicle's reaction.
The cruise vehicle, failing to detect the person underneath it, then tried to pull over to the side of the road, and it dragged the woman over 20 feet.
And the regulatory consequences were just swift and brutal, and they were amplified by Cruise's lack of candor.
That was the killer. In November 2024, Cruise admitted to submitting a false record to NHTSA to try and influence the investigation.
The cover-up.
The cover-up. And that admission resulted in a deferred prosecution agreement, a massive $500,000 criminal fine, and this mandatory, highly restrictive safety compliance program. It wasn't just the accident. It was the attempt to obscure the truth that brought the regulatory hammer down.
And this incident confirms Waymo's internal perspective that we talked about earlier, that a serious accident, especially one involving severe injury and a failure of transparency, is an existential threat. It costs billions in fines, shutdowns, and the long-term erosion of public trust.
It mandates their thorough, slower deployment strategy. They realize that the government and the public will demand near perfection and zero deception. Waymo's current expansion, even with their proven tech, is intensely focused on regulatory compliance and flawless risk management. They are learning directly from the painful lessons of their competitors.
Let's pivot now from the technical and regulatory landscape to the physical and social one. Section 4. The immense implications Waymo and these shared autonomous vehicles have for transforming our cities and our labor market.
And this is where we run into what I call the urban land use paradox. AVs present two wildly conflicting visions for the future of our cities.
Okay, on one side, you have the threat of urban sprawl.
Right. If private AV ownership becomes the norm, a car that drives itself and you can just nap in the back, it dramatically lowers the effective cost and effort of commuting.
Suddenly, a 90-minute commute doesn't feel so bad if you're reading or sleeping.
Exactly. And a study that focused on the Dallas-Fort Worth area, cited in our sources, was particularly alarming. It predicted that the adoption of private AVs could lead to up to a 68% increase in the horizontal spread of cities.
Wow.
People will just choose to live further out, increasing trip lengths and the demand for travel.
But on the other side, and this is where Waymo's model fits, you have the prediction of urban densification.
This is the revolutionary aspect. Waymo operates shared autonomous vehicles, or SAVs, and by reducing the need for private car ownership, you dramatically reduce the need for parking.
And parking lots, garages, on-street parking, they consume enormous, valuable urban space.
Huge amounts. Studies suggest that each SAV could potentially replace 10 to 20 private vehicles. Think about that. You free up all of those corresponding parking spaces for denser, mixed-use development, or even parks.
But there is a logistical nightmare scenario that city planners are starting to grapple with. The zombie car problem.
The turn is provocative, but the concern is very real.
So what is it?
If the cost of parking your car downtown is higher than the cost of fuel and maintenance for the car to just drive around aimlessly,
Owners of private AVs will just send their empty cars to circle the block.
or drive up and down the freeway until they're needed again, it would dramatically increase traffic congestion, wear and tear on roads, and pollution.
That forces cities to rethink everything from congestion pricing to zoning laws just to keep the streets navigable. But the impact on the landscape is matched only by the inevitable profound shift in the labor market.
The job loss concern is absolutely justified, and the scale is vast. AVs are projected to cause widespread redundancies. We're talking millions of workers in trucking, taxi, courier, and food delivery.
The U.S. Department of Commerce has an estimate that's just stunning. 1 in 9 workers are currently in occupations that will be directly affected by autonomous technology.
1 in 9.
And the public is certainly nervous. A survey showed 60% of people were at least moderately concerned about job losses for drivers. But what's interesting is the stakeholder consensus. They all confirmed that the universal use of AVs is inevitable.
The discussion is no longer about if, it's about when, and what immediate labor market planning we need to be doing right now.
And it's not all negative.
No. Experts noted that many of these traditional driving jobs are intrinsically unhealthy. We see high incidences of sleep apnea, obesity, loneliness, especially in the freight industry. So automation could be seen as an opportunity to move workers into safer, more fulfilling roles.
Which brings us to job creation. The survey showed that nearly half of respondents, 49%, believed AVs would result in increased jobs in technical areas, like IT technicians.
But the new roles go far beyond just coders. You're going to need new hybrid roles, people who understand both the operational process and the IT systems. You'll need customer assistance roles for troubleshooting, and you'll need vast maintenance and vehicle prep crews.
The people who husk the vehicles.
Exactly. The staff responsible for that intense cleaning, refueling, and staging of the fleet. The AV requires constant, high-quality maintenance to ensure safety.
And crucially, experts are stressing the need for proactive planning. Companies and governments need to inform employees out these changes now.
So they can prepare, whether that's retraining for these new IT hybrid positions or, phased retirement for older workers. There's a chance to convert some of these driving roles into higher-value service roles, perhaps assisting disabled passengers with mobility challenges.
This whole discussion about logistics, cost, and risk management is defined by Waymo's expensive, deliberate B2C model, and that model leads directly to the core philosophical disagreement in the industry.
Our final section.
This is Section 5, the Philosophy Wars. This is Waymo's LiDAR-focused strategy against the vision-only approach championed by Tesla. It is the ultimate hardware battleground.
As we established, Waymo is the Fusion standard bearer. Their L4 vehicles use that expensive sensor suite, 5 LiDARs, radar, and 29 cameras.
So Waymo's belief is, the more accurate information you have from different kinds of sensors, the safer you are, especially for depth perception and in low light.
They view their sensor redundancy as the non-negotiable foundation of their entire L4 service. But this reliance on exotic hardware carries massive drawbacks.
The cost.
The sources note that LiDAR sensors alone can range from $1,000 to $10,000 per unit. And you need 5 of them. They're bulky, they have high power requirements.
And they're sensitive to weather.
Very sensitive. Fog, heavy rain, and snow. They all scatter the laser, which confuses the system. And these factors severely limit its scalability to the mass consumer market.
Now, contrast all of that with the vision-only philosophy, famously championed by Elon Musk, who once dismissively called LiDAR a crutch.
Tesla's entire approach relies solely on 8 cameras and a very sophisticated vision neural network. Their philosophy is that the world is built for human vision, so an AI should be trained to perceive the world just as a human driver does.
And they've accumulated just massive data sets to train that network.
Over 1.3 billion miles accumulated in FSD mode, they claim. And the technical advantage is cost-effectiveness. By getting rid of the expensive LiDAR and radar, they can rapidly deploy their software across their entire fleet with an over-the-air update.
Which makes it theoretically scalable across every single car they sell.
This technical schism leads directly to the core business model showdown, B2C versus C2C. Waymo is the B2C fleet model. They focus exclusively on level 4 autonomy driverless operation within defined zones.
They own the cars, they own the tech stack, and they own the liability.
Exactly. And their scaling is constrained by fleet size, hardware cost, and regulatory approval. The key bottleneck is financial. The high cost per vehicle, estimated around $100,000 with the sensor package, presents a fundamental problem for profitability.
Especially when trying to serve peak demand.
That's why they need partnerships like Uber to optimize their capacity. Waymo has explicitly said the car drives anywhere, anytime, any condition, you can go to sleep, is not their immediate goal. They're focused on L4 as a carefully managed, profitable service.
And Tesla, on the other hand, is pursuing the C2C, or personal ownership model.
The ambitious goal there is to convert millions of personally owned Level 23 vehicles into Level 4 or L5 robotaxis overnight.
Just with a software update.
Exactly, allowing owners to rent their car out to generate income when they aren't using it.
The theoretical scaling advantage there is revolutionary, flipping a software switch to enable L4 nationwide.
But this model faces catastrophic liability risks. The minute Tesla converts a privately owned car into an unsupervised, profit-generating robotaxi, they take on enormous liability for the public safety performance of a vehicle they don't physically control.
And that massive risk is precisely why their recent Austin robotaxi demos remain so highly constrained.
Despite the grand rhetoric, they're still using the slow, supervised approaches of everyone else.
So we have the philosophical war. The methodical, expensive engineer in Waymo building a controlled service versus the ambitious software giant in Tesla aiming to bypass the hardware cost entirely.
And Waymo's success hinges on proving that L4 is safe enough to be commercially ubiquitous. Their current challenge is no longer technological perfection, but logistical perfection.
That's the key takeaway, isn't it? L4 autonomy is proving to be robust. It's generalizing to complex cities. Waymo's challenge now is about the tedious logistics, the intense risk management, and the regulatory approvals needed to fulfill that vast expansion map.
It's the complexity of that regulatory patchwork.
Yeah.
From how a state defines operator to new accountability laws like California's AB 1777 that demands patience and focused political engagement.
And if they succeed in executing this methodical, fleet-owned, heavily sensed strategy, the implications for our cities are just, they're profound.
And that's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, connecting everything back to that urban paradox we talked about. Waymo is focused on densifying the city center with efficient shared ride-hailing. If their model is successful in scales where fleets replace ownership, you might not ever own a driverless car. Instead, the autonomous fleet dramatically reduces the need for surface parking and parking structures in prime urban real estate.
City leaders will suddenly have acres of newly freed up urban space, land that was previously dedicated solely to storing cars. The question is, how will that land be repurposed?
Will it become parks, affordable housing, dense commercial hubs?
The Waymo Robotaxi is more than just a vehicle. It's a blueprint for fundamentally redesigning the modern metropolis by eliminating its single greatest land use inefficiency, the parking lot.
And that decision, made by city councils across the country, will be the true legacy of the autonomous vehicle revolution.